Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today and thank you all very much for joining. My name is Liam Doyle, Product Specialist here at StaffConnect, and part of my role is to host these webinars to discuss with people like yourselves how the importance of, or what the importance of employee engagement and how I guess mobile technology can transform engagement and internal communication. So our webinar today is slightly different as we are joined by Emma Bridger of People Lab, who will be taking us through how best to integrate your employee engagement strategy with your organizational strategy and business goals. So Emma Bridger is one of the UK's leading employee engagement and communications experts and has recently finished writing the second edition of her book, Employee Engagement, published by Coke & Page, which will be out in August of this year. She has over 20 years experience gained in a variety of roles in diverse organizations and utilities and financial services through to the public sector. And Emma, in fact, came to the field via a more unconventional route, previously lecturing on graduate and postgraduate courses in psychology, her specialist area being behavior change. So combining this understanding of psychology with practical business experience and an MBA, Emma has demonstrated how organizations can achieve their goals and create a competitive advantage by focusing on engagement with their people, customers, and stakeholders. Emma's clients view her as a trusted advisor, adding value at a strategic level whilst being able to deliver on an operational level too. So Emma has designed and developed the CIPD's range of public employee engagement courses, as well as contributing to and being published within the UK government review, Engage for Success. Emma now advises the government task force on engagement as part of the Guru Group. She's also a regular conference speaker, and case studies detailing her work have been published in industry journals. She's a qualified practicing coach and a member of the Institute of Public Relations, and we are very lucky to have her with us today. So what I'll do, I think that's a good introduction, sets you a kind of good idea of kind of Emma's experience within the sector, and what I'll do is pass you straight over to her. Emma, thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Hi everybody, really nice to be here again. For those of you that joined us on the last webinar, to be working with my colleagues at StaffConnect. So today we're going to be talking about aligning your employee engagement strategy with your organisational strategy, and this is a topic I am very passionate about. I was recently reading some comments and blogs on LinkedIn about the need to have a strategy actually in internal comms or engagement, and was there really strategy needed? And for me, it's just an absolute no-brainer that your strategy is how you kind of roadmap where you're going and why, and how you get buy-in from the rest of the organisation. And I had a kind of slightly clumsy analogy, but for me it was like saying, well, I want to drive from Land's End to John O'Groats, but I don't know why I'm going there, and I don't know, I haven't got a map, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it. It's like, well, a little bit messy. So I think it's often an overused word. I think strategy can be quite simple. So I'm just going to give you a few sort of hints and tips that will hopefully help you to think about your engagement strategy and also how you will align it to your organisational strategy. So if we could just move to the first slide. I just wanted to, sorry, the next slide. I wanted to just remind you about the research that we do. We've run this for 2 years now at People Lab, and we're back to run it for the third year, called Spotlight on Employee Engagement. And we ran this research initially to find out from practitioners what's happening within the world of engagement. And what we found is that strategy is fairly lacking in the world of engagement. So you'll see there, less than 50% of people we spoke to have a strategy. We found that people aren't really looking at return on investment. People are also not needing or not having a definition. So it all feels a little bit muddled. So well, we're kind of doing a load of stuff with the best intentions, but it's definitely not as strategic as it could be. And I feel like the more strategic we get in engagement, and the that should absolutely be aligned to the strategy of the company. That helps to really professionalize what we do. It helps to get us taken seriously. It helps to, win friends and influence people. It helps actually ultimately make a positive impact on the difference, because if we're not being strategic about what we're doing, how do we know we're having any kind of impact? And you just like doing a lot of nice stuff, but for me there's that kind of so what factor. So our research showed that we've got a long way to go when it comes to being strategic within employee engagement. And just moving on to the next slide, for me there's a piece around, you can't measure what you don't know. So we've got no idea how successful we are in engagement if we don't have a strategy there in the first place. That should outline the whole piece around why we're here and what we're trying to do and how we're going to measure it. And without any of that, like, we're just doing some stuff, and why should anybody care what we're doing? So just moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of summarize, I guess, the findings from the research that we did, spotlight research. And this kind of came out both reports that we did, which is really sort of saying, we don't have a strategy. Oh, it's kind of really dark in here. I used to move. We don't have a strategy. Obviously, very, very, very still. I'll start moving around a bit more. We don't have a strategy often. We don't really know what we mean by engagement. Definitions are very, very woolly. There isn't a demand to kind of demonstrate ROI. Is it any wonder the budget's lacking when we're not really kind of strategic about what we're doing? And we really need to demonstrate to the organisation how the work that we're undertaking within employee engagement is helping achieve the overall business strategy. Otherwise, why are we doing it? What's the point of it? We need to take a strategic approach. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer that A, we need to take a strategic approach, and B, that strategy absolutely should support and align the organisational strategy. Otherwise, why are we bothering? Okay, so just moving on. I'm just going to start by talking about the business case. Some of you might recognise this. It's a really cool infographic. Just taking a screenshot of it here, produced by Engage for Success. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go onto the Engage for Success website. And you can download this for free. There's not a lot that's free in this world, so it's nice to have free stuff. And there's like a one-page infographic that really highlights the findings from the piece of research that Engage for Success did, called Nailing the Evidence. And it's a fantastic piece of research that really demonstrates the business case. So for those of you who are sat there thinking, well, I don't really know where I'd start, how I start to align my engagement strategy to my business strategy, if you have a look at this infographic, it's pretty much every outcome that any business could ever wish to achieve is on here. So, for example, the evidence report states that companies with top quartile engagement, i.e., good engagement, high engagement, have twice the net annual profits of those that have low engagement. They have 2.5 times the revenue growth. They have 12% higher customer satisfaction scores. They have more innovation. They have less accidents. They have 40% lower churn. I could go on. So pretty much any of those business metrics that you're after within your business strategy, you can make that link back to engaged workforce. So if you're working for an organisation that wants to reduce employee turnover, you can make the link. If you're working for an organisation that wants to increase its revenue, its profit, you can make the link. If you're working for an organisation that wants less accidents, you can make the link. So what I'm saying is, it's not difficult to link the work that you will do in engagement to your business strategy. So take a look at that infographic and you will find some figures in there, and then you can go and have a look at the report itself and pull out those statistics. So that's my starting point. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So for me, getting strategic within employee engagement is really about making this transition from what we call transactional engagement to transformational engagement. And engagement's been stuck for a long time in this kind of realm of being very transactional. So kind of typified by, we do a survey, we get the results, we take the bottom 3 things, the bottom 5 things, we try and fix them, and then we tick the box and we move on. And that is it's transactional, it's very tick box, it's not strategic. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing a survey. A survey is a good piece of insight. can be helpful, but only if seen as part of the overall jigsaw, only part of the overall solution. So really being strategic in engagement is about trying to move to much more of a transactional approach. So this is where your alignment comes in. So it's really about sitting down and saying, how can an engaged workforce help us achieve our business strategy? So whatever that might look like. So our business strategy this year, the next 5 years, is about increasing revenue growth, increasing customer satisfaction, selling more widgets, attracting the best people. Let's figure out how an engaged workforce can help us to do that. And using that infographic and evidence report on the last page can give you some ideas as to how it can help. But really, it's up to you to figure out what do we need to put into our strategy to help us to achieve those objectives. But it shouldn't be difficult to make that connection. So transformational approach is about seeing engagement as a strategic driver. It's about saying it's just the way we do business. We're looking forward and we're saying, how can engagement help us achieve what we need to achieve as a business? Employers absolutely integral, and as part of this approach, you wouldn't kind of wait once a year to find out how people are feeling. We, seek and harness feedback regularly. But I guess the key difference for me is that this is about being proactive and looking forwards rather than being reactive and looking backwards and trying to fix stuff. So that's the big difference. Hopefully that makes sense. So moving on to the next slide. So I guess a kind of a simple way of looking at this, and something I've talked to people about that come on the courses that we run, is really thinking about for what purpose. So it's a great question to start with. So I think it's really easy, to kind of get sort of caught up in the tactics when it comes to engagement. So I've talked to a lot of people. We run a survey. Why do you run a survey? Well, because you want to find out how people are doing. Why do you want to find out how people are doing? And you can see where I'm going with this. It goes on and on. So starting with this question, for what purpose, is a great question to help you think more strategically. For what purpose, and how will that help our organisational strategy or our business strategy? So I've given some examples here. So these are typical employee engagement goals. Nothing wrong with these goals, but they'll probably feel quite familiar to a few of you. So some people might say, well, we're focusing on engagement because you want to achieve investors in people gold, for example, or very often we want to make the Times Top 100. There's a real obsession with that. We want to get on the Times Top 100 or the Great Place to Work list or whatever it might be. We want to win some awards. We want to be a great place to work. That's a great goal, nothing wrong with that. We want to be an employer of choice. Again, great goal. Obsession with survey response rates, don't get me started on that because I have a soapbox moment about that, but that's very often what people will say. People that come on my course say, well, why are you focusing? What's the purpose of you focusing on engagement? Why bother? Because we need to increase our survey response rates. Okay, my question, so what? What will that give you? How will that help you achieve your organisational strategy? And the last comment there, some people say we want to increase our engagement index figure. Nothing wrong with most of those. The survey response rates ones I'll come back to at another time, another webinar. But these are very often the kinds of goals that people have. Perfectly, valid goals. But actually, for me, these are kind of employee engagement goals. They're not outcomes. So for all of these, we could say, so what? So what does giving you? So what does being on the Times Top 100 list give you? So what does being a great place to work give you? And it's really good to kind of interrogate this and keep digging down into this. The kinds of outcomes that you will eventually get to are the sorts of things that you saw on the infographic before. So you might get to the point, well, actually, if we are Times Top 100, then we can attract the best people. We're in a very competitive environment. It's hard to get talent. And if we run Times Top 100, got great Glassdoor scores, for example, we can really attract the best people. We can have a great employer brand, and that's actually what this is all about. It's not really about being on Times Top 100. It's about being able to attract the best people. Or if we're a great place to work, people come to work, they have a better experience, they maybe advocate us to other people, they recommend us as a place to work to their friends and family, or maybe they recommend our products and services, which is great. We're able to increase sales, etc. So you start to see how some of those engagement goals can link to your business outcomes. So reducing turnover, reducing absenteeism, increasing productivity, increasing sales, improving customer experience, reputation, etc. And for those of you that might be sat there feeling maybe a little bit cynical or thinking, how do you really link those goals to those outcomes? You absolutely can. I think by being strategic at the beginning and saying, this is what we're aiming to achieve, these are our engagement goals, and these are the business outcomes we're going after, and this is the stuff that we're going to do, and we're going to measure the hell out of it as we go through. I think that when we implement the actions that we're talking about within our strategy and we see some movement on some of these goals, I think we can take some of the credit for that, because that's what we set out to achieve. Now, unless you kind of conduct a scientifically controlled experiment in a controlled environment where you only change one variable, you will never be able to say for sure that it's down to what you've been doing in engagement. But you can have a pretty good go at it, I think, and certain industries and environments lend themselves more to these. For example, retail environments where you can compare different stores or branches or call centres, for example. You can really say, well, hang on, look, that call centre's got really high engagement, and look at their scores, they're through the roof. So absolutely they're linked. So this is kind of how I work with people to get them to think about how they would align their engagement strategy to their business strategy. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please. So some good questions to ask. So these are sort of some of the questions that I challenge people with if I'm training or if I'm working with a client to help them develop their strategy. So what is it you need employee engagement to deliver for you? So as I said, people get very bogged down in the survey, for example. It's all about response rates and increasing certain items in the survey by 3 percentage points. Well, what's that actually going to do for you? You put all that effort in, what's it going to give you? So what is it you need employee engagement to deliver for you? What does success look like? So let's fast forward 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and we've got this highly engaged workforce. What's different? What does success look like? How will people be behaving? What's different to what's happening to today? Where would you want to be in 5 years' time? What are the sorts of outcomes you're looking to achieve, and how are they aligned to the organisational business outcomes? And if they're not, then why bother? And ultimately, for what purpose? So these are the sorts of questions you need to be asking yourself in order to think more strategically and align your engagement strategy to your business strategy. So if we just move on to the next slide, I think it might be getting towards the last slides here. So it's a really, really simple tool that I use to get people to kind of really simplify their strategy. Now, I'm not saying you wouldn't have, you know, a more in-depth document sitting behind this, but I think that strategy is one of those words that kind of scares a lot of people. They, oh, I don't, you know, I'm not strategic. I don't think strategically. I don't know what strategy means. And I really like this as a one-pager kind of template, just to get you thinking about what you're doing and why. So at the top, really thinking about, well, talking about employee engagement strategy or roadmap, whatever you want to call it. So what do we mean by engagement? And it doesn't have to be anything super complicated. It can be simple as creating a great place to work. There are loads of definitions out there. Have a look, see what works for you. The definition that I use is the extent to which people feel personally involved in the success of the business. So what's our future vision? So what kind of workforce culture environment do we want to create, you know, via this strategy? So spend some time thinking about that. And therefore, what are our goals and outcomes? So the goals might be times top 100, increase engagement index by X percentage points by this day. And the outcomes are that we will contribute towards those business strategy outcomes. So, you know, reducing employee attrition, creating, you know, improving reputation, better customer service. You know, we're all familiar with the, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Sears customer value profit chain. You know, if we get it right with our people, they get it right with the customers, and it links to business outcomes. So those are the sorts of things we're looking at there. And then high level, what we're going to do, what are the drivers? So what are the things we're actually going to be doing? And then at the bottom there, how are we going to measure it? So how will we know we've achieved all this stuff? What the measure is going to be. So as I said, there may well be a load of detail that sits behind this, but certainly in terms of getting you thinking about, you know, sort of high level strategy, I think it's a really, really good starting point. So hopefully that's helpful to you. I think the next slide is questions, if I remember rightly. I may surprise myself. No, it's questions next. So if we just move on to the next slide, if you've got any questions, I would be delighted to answer them.
Hi there, sorry, my computer seems to be acting up slightly. Emma, can you still hear me?
I can, yeah.
Good. Oh, we've got to come off. Let me just get back on the slideshow then. Well, this is all not going very well. What's happening here? Sorry about this. While I sort this out, quick question for you, Emma. So, what tactical advice can you offer for help, what tactical advice can you offer for helping to build an internal business case to elevate the importance of employee engagement?
Yeah, so I think really reinforcing the points I've already talked about. So I absolutely believe that you need to talk the language of the business to get that buy-in. So, you know, lots of people, even very senior people, don't like the term employee engagement. They think it's management speak. If you talk the language of the business and say, you know, I know we've got an issue with attrition, or I know we need to really improve our net promoter score, and I can help. You know, most people sit up and take notes and say, okay, tell me how you help me do that. And in my kind of early career, when I first started working in this area, that's exactly what happened. And I've got a great case study from when I did some work with Royal Sun Alliance many years ago, and kind of, you know, thought about what was keeping the directors awake at night, and offered support in terms of, you know, focusing on people engagement and how I felt that that could help them with the issues they were grappling with. So speaking the language of the business, talking to them in terms of their strategy and what they're trying to achieve, and then presenting them with some ideas on how focus on engagement can help with that. So it might be bringing some stuff from an external perspective. Is that infographic I've showed you? So there's lots of brilliant case studies in that report. So sort of saying, well, in this organisation, here's what they did, and here are the results they got. I think it could work here. Why wouldn't we do it? So yeah, speak the language of the business, link it to business objectives, you know, use as little jargon as possible, and demonstrate how you can help to achieve what the business wants to achieve through the work that you're doing in engagement.
No, it's definitely a good answer. I'd agree with that. But I guess what role would you say technology plays in, I guess, firstly helping to improve employee engagement, but secondly to measure progress towards the business goals?
Yeah, so I think there's huge potential for technology to play a role in engagement. So I think with the measurement side, you know, we talked about moving from transactional to transformational. Transformation is much more about kind of real-time listening, you know, not waiting once a year for survey results to come out, by which point you get your pack, it's already like 3 months out of date. Technology can help you really keep your finger on the pulse of how people are feeling, sentiment, what's really going on in the organisation, get a sense for what people are talking about, what's keeping them awake at night. So I think from that point of view, there's a huge opportunity for technology there. I think the more formal measurement, so, you know, we see a lot of clients who are moving away from that annual survey to much more real-time listening, which I've mentioned. Giving employees a voice, I think, can really help there. We know that's a key sort of driver when it comes to improving employee engagement as well. So giving employees a voice, and a whole host of other kind of applications as well, depending on what sort of technical solution you go for. So whether it's sort of sharing ideas or collaborating, reaching hard to reach employees that perhaps didn't feel very connected to the organisation and now feel more connected because they've got some technology which helps them feel like part of something. There are a number of ways that technology can really help to achieve those strategic aims that we've been talking about.
Thank you. And I guess I know you mentioned Glassdoor slightly earlier, but how much of a driver are Glassdoor rankings, you know, other stuff like that, becoming in, I guess, elevating the importance of an engaged workforce? And I guess the second part to the question is, I guess, do you think that, you know, engagement, internal comms or HR leaders can leverage this dynamic in raising employee engagement to, I guess, a board level issue?
Yeah, so I think Glassdoor's been great for me in terms of getting people to sit up and take notice. So years ago, when I first started People Lab 9 years ago, I don't know how. It wasn't because I'm big or clever. I just think it's accident. I came across Glassdoor, and I've always talked about it. And back then, I would deliver training or go speak to clients and talk about Glassdoor, and inevitably they'd never heard of it, and they'd sort of sit, listen, and they would kind of, the mouths would drop open. They'd be like, "Well, they can't do that, can they?" And then they grab their phones and they start looking at their ratings. They'd be like, "How is this allowed? This can't happen." And today it's a very kind of well-used, well-respected tool. And I think even back then, it was my kind of secret weapon when it came to making the business case for focusing on engagement. So I kind of make the business case to clients, talk about all the evidence, and not always, but sometimes they say, "Yeah, I get that, but our business is different. It's not the same for us. You wouldn't get those results with us." And if I felt like I was kind of losing the battle or losing the conversation, I'd just bring up Glassdoor, and normally that was enough to get people to sit up and take notice in terms of, okay, so suddenly we're in a space where people that have worked here can anonymously go out and talk about the business as they would, a restaurant or a hotel or any sort of other sorts of experiences. And suddenly there's that kind of realization that, we need to get our house in order. And we need to make sure that we get this right. So I think it's been hugely helpful. And of course, now you talk about Glassdoor and everybody's really familiar with it. And I have a couple of clients that don't run a server, they just use Glassdoor, and they encourage their people to go on and say, just use Glassdoor, tell us how you feel about working here, which is really brave but fantastic. And of course, they're companies that are probably in a place where they feel quite confident that the feedback's going to be good, but it's still a very brave thing to do. So I think it's been hugely helpful to make the business case. And I think there was a second part of the question, which I've forgotten, Liam. I'm sorry.
Basically, no, not to worry. It was quite a long question, but these Glassdoor rankings, do you think that, I guess, engagement, internal comms or HR leaders can leverage this dynamic in raising employee engagement to a board level issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think using the rankings themselves and the data is a great way to sort of say, look, here's where we are now, here's where we want to be. It's a great source of insight on there as well. Why wouldn't you use it? So I think it's just hugely helpful in terms of giving you more sort of ammunition to make the case, really.
No, definitely. I would have to say I agree with that. That is just about it for today, I think, guys. Thank you all very much for joining us. Emma, thank you so much again for joining. What I'll do is quickly pop your contact details on screen. So if you'd like to get in contact with Emma, find a bit more about employee engagement, then please do. All the contact details on screen. What I will also do is, after we've done the webinar, is Emma's brilliant spotlight on employee engagement, who she previously have done a webinar with us on that as well. The report itself I will send out to all of you guys, if that's okay with you, Emma.
Yeah.
So you guys can have a good read. It's a really detailed and thorough report, and it goes through quite a few of Emma's findings that she kind of went through with us today. So yeah, I will get that sent out to all of you as well. Thank you very much for attending. Emma, thank you very much once again for joining. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And if you'd like to find a bit more about employee engagement from our side, from StaffConnect side, or when I send you out an email, all my contact details will be on that, so we can, start those discussions up as well. Otherwise, I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and thank you very much for joining. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.